This episode of The Charity Show is brought to you by The Good Studio, creating great content for good causes. Hello, how you doing? Welcome back. You're listening to The Charity Show, the podcast about what it's really like to work in UK charities. In each episode, we sit down with people from across the sector to talk honestly about the job, what's been tough, what's been great, and what they've learned along the way. Chief executives, trustees, fundraisers, volunteers, and comms professionals. These are real conversations about great charity work for people we can all learn something from. If you're enjoying the show, please do hit follow, leave us a quick 5-star rating and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Right then, here's what's coming up in episode 41. What's your take on the way of the world at the moment when it comes to celebs?
It feels like it's getting trickier, but also more exciting because of the ways of reaching out and connecting with, celebrities and influencers. We're very fortunate at the Brain Tumour charity. All of our celebrities have that personal connection. It brings that integrity. It gives that authenticity, so we can work that relationship very, very closely.
I have worked in organisations where someone has kind of gone off script a bit on social media and the charity has publicly distanced themselves within hours. I've also worked with organisations where someone was accused of something and it actually went to court, and they stood by that. They had been their patron for 20 years. They stood by their patron all the way through to the case. It was thrown out of court. They were found not guilty of all charges, and the celebrity actually publicly thanked the charity for standing by them.
One of the things that really strikes me is about how the word celebrity and the word influencer are one and the same now, really, and how things have changed so much in such a short period of time that celebrity now, you don't have to be on TV, you don't have to be in the movies, you don't have to be a singer, songwriter and have a successful band. You can be a streamer, you can be a gamer, you can be somebody who just does stupid stuff on YouTube.
Welcome back to The Charity Show. I'm Piers Townley.
And I'm Tim Beynon. And Piers, it's still, would you believe it, still January. Feels like it's been going on forever. Feels like it's been about 6 weeks long. I don't know about you, how have you felt?
Yeah. It's the 375th day of the month, isn't it? I've just been weeping internally towards payday, basically, but finally I think that's arrived. Yeah, it just feel like a long time when things like that, isn't it? And then I was thinking of yourself and other freelancers out there that it's that time of the year to do the tax returns as well. So I mean, what a worse time of year to face that as well.
I know. Especially if you've got the whole Christmas expenditure that's just been and gone as well. It's like, oh God. Yeah, absolutely.
You look through closed sort of hands and closed your fingers.
I'm just not going to look at the credit card bill. I'm just going to pretend it's not there. What about work-wise? What have you been up to?
It's been really, really busy, really busy. We're kind of all steam ahead with planning for March, which is our big Brain Tumour Awareness Month, BTAM it's called, and it's a nationwide awareness month. It's a big one for any of the brain tumour charities out there. So we've just been doing loads of planning for that. And actually, along the theme of what Rachel's going to talk about later on this episode, we're doing a lot of really unique and important kind of like celebrity plans that are in the pipeline. They've been bubbling away. We've got the big one, which is Peter Kay's support for the Brain Tumour charity and 11 other charities. So that's an ongoing piece of work that's happening in the background. Obviously an ongoing bit of media work as well, because every time he gets interviewed or talks about his tour, we get a mention as well. So that's been really lovely. And then we've had comedian and author Miles Jupp. He's going to appear on one of our podcasts, our charity podcast soon, which is fantastic. He's over in the States at the moment. He's got a stand-up tour at the moment that's called On I Bang, but it's specifically about his own brain tumour diagnosis. So it's quite a really unusual kind of topic to be talking about, but it goes down really well. He did a tour in the UK towards the end of and the middle of last year, but he's taken it over to New York now as well. So keeping him on the radar as well. We've got actress Amy Nuttall. She's doing stuff for our big bake for the Brain Tumour Awareness Month. And we've got something that I'm dying to talk about, but I can't at the moment because it's just in the pipeline. But it involves a really well-known DJ duo, some really kind of cool stuff. And I've got a really cool event planned.
DJ duo. Well. Okay, all right. You're teasing us there, Piers.
No, don't guess.
I'm thinking either Daft Punk or Pet Shop Boys. That's the only sort of.
Pet Shop Boys, yeah.
I don't know.
That takes you back. No, but that'd be really exciting. And obviously, there's a lot of work going on in the background there. But again, with their support, creating a really unique fundraising event for us a bit later on in the year. So it'll be great when I can talk about that. Fantastic. How about you, Tim? How's it going?
Yeah, not bad. No, I'm still thinking about you mentioned the big bake. That's one thing I miss about not working in a charity setting in an office is the lack of cake. There's always a bake sale when you work in an office. I don't get that here anymore at home.
I keep saying I don't have a sort of sweet tooth, but every time I walk past our little kitchen, someone's brought something in, especially when we've been doing some of the shoots for it. It's like, there's too much sugar, too much sugar.
It's for charity though. So you just buy it.
Exactly.
Whatever. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been busy January, really busy January actually for me, and it's been really nice. I've really this month been sort of leaning into the charity freelance community, and it's really big. There's lots of freelancers out there doing some incredible work with a huge variety of charities. And you can, if you're a freelancer yourself, then you can join these communities and these online meetups and get to know the rest of or as many people as are on these calls from across the freelance community. And I've been really enjoying doing that because they have a huge range of diverse skills, offering great advice. They've all been there and done it much longer than I have, and loads of experience of what it's like and the challenges and the plus and points and the low points and that kind of stuff. So it's been nice to meet other people in my sort of situation and to pick their brains a bit and to find out a bit more about what they're doing. And I would say, for charities out there, the freelance community is very, very rich with experience, and they've got people here with a huge, diverse range of skills and creativity, and they can offer something unique to a charity that perhaps charities might not have thought of or might not have considered. So it's been really, really fantastic to sort of lean into that a bit this month, which has been great. And in stark contrast for me personally at home, building work going on, had chimneys about to fall down, so had to have it repaired. So it's been stressful, mega stressful at home with all that going on. And also I'm fed up with the weather. Totally fed up with. I'm fed up with it being rained on. Taking the dog out, coming back drenched. Don't know about you, Piers, but I want a sunny dog walk. Seems like I can't remember the last sunny dog walk.
I'm getting worse as well as with the cleaning up of the hands, the cleaning up of the paw prints. It's just making me a neurosis. It's just
yeah. Just want a nice, sunny, dry dog walk. Don't have to dry. There's nothing worse than the smell of wet dog around the house as well. So
can't get rid of it.
Anyway, lots coming up on the show today. We've got a great interview with charity PR and celebrity influencer consultant Rachel Braier, diving into how charities should be thinking about approaching and nurturing relationships with celebs. Now, Piers, this is much more your world than it is mine. This is your bread and butter. It's what you do at the Brain Tumour charity. Such a shame that you couldn't make the interview with Rachel herself, but what do you make of the state of the world at the moment in terms of celebrities and influencers and all those kind of people who charities need, rely on, and try and get hold of? What's your take on the way of the world at the moment when it comes to celebs?
It feels like it's getting trickier, but also more exciting because of the ways of reaching out and connecting with celebrities and influencers. We're very fortunate at the Brain Tumour charity. All of our celebrities, and I think this is the same with most charities, you have that personal connection. It brings that integrity. It brings that kind of honesty that we do with our comms and our work. And the celebrities that we do have understand what we're doing, but because they've got a personal connection, whether they're living with or they've known someone who has passed away or someone else who's living with a brain tumour, it gives that authenticity. So we can work that relationship very, very closely. I'm very fortunate that I know a lot of our main ones, personally over the years that I've been there, some of them actually from previous journalism days as well. And so it kind of bypasses the manager agent kind of gatekeep that sometimes that you get. So you can have a direct line with them. With that comes a huge responsibility as well. We have to be aware of and be very sensitive to their wider brand or their wider media work, or obviously whether they want to be approached by press or what kind of things they use and what kind of things we work with them on. And that kind of crossover between what is a celebrity and what is an influencer is also a really interesting one. I get constantly asked when we have, for example, some of our awareness campaigns, we need to get these influencers, we need to get that influencers. And the first question is, well, why and how? Basically, just having a list of names that don't have a connection to the charity, is that actually beneficial? Probably not for our cause. So it's a very fluid, I think, kind of situation and kind of role to have. And Rachel delves much into this, But yeah, we're very fortunate that we have our key celebrities. Some of them I mentioned earlier on in the show, and that, and the likes of Tom Daley, for example, who's been associated with us for a long time, has a huge reach. The millions of reach. So celebrity, but he's an influencer because he's got a huge amount of influence over on the social side of things. We've got a few supporters who are big on the socials, but you might not know them as celebrities. But then that talks to a different demographic. So lots of moving pieces, and keeping that relationship going is kind of tricky, but really, really exciting when it works, and really, a real honour to work with people who are in that kind of spotlight, who get what we do as a charity and who support our work. It makes it a real highlight of the role.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating time. I think it's a really interesting interview we've got coming up. And I think one of the things that really strikes me is about how the word celebrity and the word influencer are one and the same now, really, and how things have changed so much in such a short period of time that celebrity now, you don't have to be on TV, you don't have to be in the movies, you don't have to be a singer, songwriter and have a successful band. You can be a streamer, you can be a gamer, you can be somebody who just does stupid stuff on YouTube, whatever, and you could get huge followings, massive followings. People who have followings bigger than mainstream TV has audiences for prime time TV these days. And in their world, Tim,
for example, in the gaming world or the music world or the stand-up comedian world, they are the celebrity. Yeah, but they might not be classed a traditional celebrity as we used to think of them, years ago.
Exactly. But also on the flip side of that, which is really interesting, again, Rachel picks up on this, about the importance of micro-influencers. So when you have a specific community, say in your instance, the brain tumour community, or, a charity with a specific interest or cause or reason for being, the people who are influential might not be famous. They might not have tens and thousands, hundreds of thousands of followers. They might just have a small number of followers, but those followers might be really, really crucial. And that person might be very, very well known to that very niche community. And therefore they're very, very, they can be as important, if not more important than big name celebrities. So that's fascinating stuff.
And also their area of expertise. We have a high profile influencer section over on the Brain Tumour Charities site. And we've got a collection of very well connected young people that are all over their socials and their own individual kind of swim lanes that are fantastic for, pushing out our policy and our campaigns. So, part of our young ambassador network, which is generally, the younger generation, 18 to 24-year-olds, maybe slightly older. Yeah, you're right. They have their own spheres of influence collectively as a force. It's huge.
Yeah, we've got to up our game on TikTok, Piers. That's what we've got to do. But anyway,
I don't think we should go there. No, it's witchcraft.
Definitely not. That's enough about us. I think it's about time we hear from someone who actually knows what she's talking about. Not that you, of course, you know what you're talking about, Piers. Not I'm talking about myself here. You know what you're talking about. This is you. But let's talk from somebody who definitely knows what they're talking about. Let's hear from Rachel. This week, we're diving into a part of charity communications that can feel exciting, intimidating, and sometimes just a little bit mysterious. Working with celebrities, influencers, and content creators. Because let's be honest, for a lot of charities, especially small and medium-sized ones, the idea of approaching a celebrity can feel completely out of reach. Where do you even start? How do you know who's a good fit? And how do you avoid ending up with more risk than reward? To help us unpack all of that, we're joined by Rachel Braier, a PR and celebrity consultant who spent years matching public figures with charities in a way that actually makes sense. Rachel's worked on everything from national campaigns to behind-the-scenes ambassador stewardship, and she brings a refreshingly human, practical take on what really works and what definitely doesn't when charities engage people with influence. In this first part, we talk about how the definition of celebrity has changed, why lived experience matters more than follower numbers, and how charities can stop feeling cap in hand and start feeling confident about the value they bring. If you've ever wondered whether celebrity engagement is only for the big players, this one's for you. Rachel, welcome to the Charity Show. It's lovely to see you, lovely to welcome you this morning. Tell me a little bit about this amazing world that you work in. I must admit, Piers unfortunately can't be with us today. Celebrity is his world and it's what he does, his bread and butter. It's definitely not so much of my everyday. So tell me a little bit about you and your role and what you do.
So basically, I match celebrities, influencers, content creators, let's call them public figures because they all kind of do the same job. I match them to charities, non-profits, government organisations sometimes. I also do brands as well, but I mainly kind of focus on the charity world because it's so needed and it can be a very good fit. So I work on a sort of consultancy basis. Sometimes I'm retained over a long time, 6-7 years I've been with some clients. Sometimes it's a short burst of a project. But yeah, just looking at how you can amplify the charity's message using a celebrity.
Sure. Fascinating field of work. How on earth do you get into it? How do you start with that?
I think it's almost so niche. Like, I think I've kind of created it for myself, really. I've always been in PR. I've done that my whole career. I started in agencies, like boutique Soho agencies in the late 90s. And I always say that Ab Fab, Absolutely Fabulous was a documentary. It wasn't a sitcom. It was actually what it was like.
Don't tell me that was real life.
It really was. It really was. Like, people don't believe it, but it actually was, not dissimilar. And I did that for 7 years. And then I had a complete sort of change, and I did a 6-month maternity cover at Bernardo's and ended up staying for the next 8 years in their press office. And then I kind of went freelance in 2012 when my kids were quite young and it was difficult to have very young children and work in a 24-hour press office. I think, probably a lot of parents find that. And I went freelance, and I could just see that traditional media was kind of on the decline, not dead, but decline. And that social media was still in its infancy, but I could see the way the land was lying, and I knew that you couldn't really do PR in the traditional sense of the word without a face, famous face. Obviously, I couldn't ever imagine how social media would kick off, and that we'd be talking about content creators and influencers and all the myriad forms of sort of public figures now. But I just found that I was getting work if I kind of put celebrity PR in my LinkedIn. And it kind of went in that direction. And I've been quite lucky that people move around the sector quite a lot. So it's mainly word of mouth. But I've found this kind of lane that works for me and that there is a demand for.
There's definitely a demand for it. You're absolutely right. I'm really keen to dig into that a little bit. Tell me, though, before we start sort of looking at how you match celebrities with charities, tell me, in your mind, what's the difference, or how has the world changed in terms of the fact that celebrity now extends to the world of social media influencers, which I think I don't really like that as a term personally, because it's quite a catch-all term. But in terms of people who are influential on social media now, celebrities don't have to be film stars, TV stars, musicians. They can be people who stream games, as we've seen the winner of I'm a Celebrity, hugely famous because he streams his gaming. So how do you define that world of celebrity and influencers now? How does that look to you?
I don't think there is a distinction, really. The Angry Ginge winning I'm a Celebrity, George Clark doing really well on Strictly. I think we're seeing now that there isn't a distinction. If someone has captured the public, has captured the kind of public sentiment, or there is an appeal for the public there, it's one of the same, whether you've done that because you've been in a Hollywood film, or you've had a hit record, or you're a gaming expert on TikTok. I just think it's all about, have you got that appeal to the public? And that's it, really. And we are in interesting times, because I think I'm a Celebrity is a bit of a watershed for the powers that be. ITV are obviously very, very aware of what these streamers and gamers and influencers, content creators, what they can bring to a kind of legacy platform. And obviously his audience will have been voting for him, and that's obviously had a big impact. But he still has to have made that impact with sort of older viewers who don't know what a streamer is, or have never heard of him before. So obviously at the end of the day, it comes down to the profile of the person, the personality of the person. But I think this is going to have a real impact. And I think ITV have been quite canny in being able to spot this and sort of, get his audience on board. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that, for sure.
Is it also fair to say that probably that reflects a change in society's media consumption in terms of the habits? People don't. It's not just what you watch on TV or what you listen to anymore. It's what you stream on social media. Is what you do. It's the way people, all the types of media that people consume are changing. It's not the mainstream anymore. It's much wider than that.
I think what's really interesting is that 20 years ago, it would have been, right, this is a Telegraph reader and they look like this and they dress like this and they have this kind of job and this is what a Daily Mail reader looks like. This is a Sun reader. And we kind of stuck to that really rigidly when we were trying to appeal to certain audiences. But I think now in women's magazines, you were either you read Vogue or you read the women's weeklies, and it was very, very rigid. And that's how we saw audiences. But now, people really don't. It's very hard to predict what is going to pique their interest. If you look at the people I follow on Instagram, I follow most of the reality stars. I love The Only Way Is Essex. I watched every episode in the world. I also like really highbrow. My viewing habits tend to be either lowbrow or highbrow. I don't seem to do anything in the middle. And I think that's really interesting. People will follow Vogue magazine, but they'll also follow someone who was in, Jersey Shore or Geordie Shore, So I think things are moving, and I think media has maybe or PR has been a bit late to the party to realise that happens. And also now, with Netflix have even kind of taken this on board. People tend to scroll while they're watching telly or watching film, or and Netflix apparently have kind of are now building that into their programming. Now, whether that's a good thing or not, you can argue that, possibly not. But it is the way that people consume media now. And I think we have to, when we're looking at media, we have to look at it as a suite of how can we appeal, how can we change the messaging slightly and appeal to lots of different media really with one asset. Whereas in the past, it would have been, right, this is for our, our broadsheets, and this is for our tabloids, and this is for our women's media. I think it's just, this is the message, let's tailor it appropriately.
Yeah. With all that in mind, and given the fact that what you've just mapped out there is that the landscape is so vast now for anybody, and just thinking about charities in particular, how on earth, with that in mind, the fact that there are so many different types of media, different routes that people, different channels and digital platforms that people consume all the time, and that landscape is vast and the number of people is so massive. How do you go about matching up celebrities / influencers with charities? How does that actually work?
I mean, my starting point is generally, do they have lived experience of the issue, of the charity? That has to be your starting point, whether it's them personally or a close family member. Because ultimately, what's interesting with a public figure is that they are both the storyteller and they are the medium. So it's quite they kind of sit at, that's why they're so key. But in exactly the same way that if you had a beneficiary advocating or talking about the charity, you would want them to have lived experience. So that's always the starting point. Now, that's not always possible. You can work on something really specific. I mean, I worked for a learning disability charity for quite some time, and there is a limited pool of people that you can call on. And sometimes there are issues that the celebrity may be happy to talk about, but their family members may not be happy to talk about. Their sister might be okay with them doing it, but their mum isn't. So it can be difficult to get that lived experience. So then you need to look at sort of adjacent issues. Where do they sit? Where they might have a natural sort of adjacent fit. And do they feel right for the charity? A lot of it is very instinctive. And that's why I hope that AI isn't going to completely replace me at some stage, because a lot of it is the human element of, do they feel like the right fit? And then it's about getting that shortlist together and talking to the client, the charity. Generally, it's the PR team, 9 times out of 10 that I work with, and saying, right, how do these feel for you? I've been doing it so long that I've very rarely, put someone forward that they don't agree with. I kind of know, who's going to scare the horses and who isn't. And I I do a lot of due diligence. I do a lot of reading around who they are, what they've said, all that kind of stuff, and not just on traditional platforms. Like, I like it or loathe it. X is quite good for, getting a feel for what people are saying about celebrities and feeling about them. So I do a bit of that and a bit of Reddit, because that's when you get the kind of what the public really feel about people. Daily Mail online comments. And then I produce a sort of rationale for why they should use them. Sometimes they might need a bit of hand holding with certain people, maybe older trustees, an older chief executive who perhaps doesn't understand just how big an influencer is on social and what the impact would be. So sometimes there's a bit of an education piece there. I mean, that's the bit I like, the strategic rationale building side of it. Then you've got to go out to agents, and that's the really difficult bit, because, as I always say, agents are on 20% commission, and 20% of nothing is nothing. So that's the hard bit. That's where the sound comes.
And I think that's probably the bit that puts a lot of charities off, even thinking about approaching celebrities, because especially when it comes to sort of medium and small charities, so thinking we don't have the exposure of the King's Trust, Macmillan, Comic Relief, these giant charities. So why on earth is a celebrity going to come to us, be interested in working with us, when they can work with charities that are going to get them vast amounts of exposure? And also because, there's no point in me approaching the agent. The agent's just going to tell me to do one, because we're a tiny little charity that isn't going to offer them, a huge amount of national coverage. How do you support smaller and medium-sized charities to kind of get over that hurdle? And how do you get past the agent so that you can actually talk to the celebrities?
I mean, I do work with a lot of smaller charities, and you'd be surprised. Like, sometimes if they are their shining star, because they don't have that access to a big roster of names, they can really look after that celebrity and really make sure that they are front and center of any campaigning and that kind of thing. And, if it's an organization that can help their profile to build, then they could choose you over one of the big boys potentially. I mean, look, it's luck as much as judgment. You might just catch that agent at a particular time, at a particular moment where they're feeling, you've got them in a good mood. But generally, this could be beneficial for my client. I'll give you some examples. They may be looking to move from the reality world into broadcast world, and you are giving them the chance to do a podcast or to host an event. It might just be that that's the moment. I have worked for a children's charity and approached someone who was huge on a reality show, but he was wanting to move into presenting, and he was up for a gig with CBeebies as his first presenting job. So having a children's charity asking him to act as host and auctioneer was brilliant for his show reel. So sometimes you get them when they're looking to make that transition, and it can be quite a good thing for their show reel. Other times they are just generally, they want to tell their story, and it helps them if they've got another string to their bow. If they're going on, I don't know, let's say they're going on Loose Women to talk about a new book they've got out, or a new show they've got out, or a new brand association. They're not just going to be asked questions about that. They're going to be asked questions about their personal life. Now, if you can go to them and say, and I'm also supporting this great initiative for XY charity, actually, it's good for them. It makes them look good. It gives them something else to talk about. And it means that they've then got two things before they have to talk about their personal life, which they may or may not want to do. So actually, it can be really, really beneficial. But, the problem is that you've got to go out to a hell of a lot of people to get that bit of good luck. And obviously I do it in a strategic way. I do work, as I say, a lot on instinct. I kind of think, I think this person's trying to, I'm just getting the feeling they're looking for stage work. I've just been on the Royal Shakespeare Company. So I think, right, okay, that's a really good fit for them, because I think they're trying to make the transition to stage. So it's kind of going on instinct, but as I say, it's luck. And so I've just started working in a sort of different way, not to plug my business, but it is a plug for my business, in that I'm going to be working a lot more collaboratively and smartly with talent agents. So I went in this week and saw one of the really big talent agents, probably one of the biggest. And I said, look, this is not a smart way of working, that I send out 50 emails and I hope that one lands. Can I come in and consult with you and find out, whose career do you want to push in this direction? Whose career do you want to amplify? What can we do to work together in a smarter way? And I think that's probably how things have got to go, that we become a little bit more professional and we stop cap in hand. I think, this is a whole different podcast, but I think charities across the board with fundraising, we're all a bit meek and cap in hand and can you support us? Actually, we've got a really good asset. We've got a really good product. We should feel confident in being able to sell that product in a really assertive way, I think.
Yeah, I agree. The cynic in me, I totally understand what you're saying about how it's important for celebrities to understand how supporting a charity can sort of help them in what they want to achieve. But it kind of just feels a little bit cold to me in terms of the fact that they'll do something because it helps them in terms of their next step in their career, rather than doing it purely out of a philanthropic desire to help. Yeah. Is there such a thing as there must be celebs and influencers out there who just want to do it for no recognition, for no nothing other than just to help people?
There are.
So they exist.
And I obviously I'm not going to name names, but I know people who are doing it, because they really feel it, or they've really got a connection with the charity. And does it happen as much as I would like? Probably not. What you've got to remember is that celebrities are human beings, right? This is what I always say. They're just people. And if someone said to you, "Oh, Tim, can you take a day off work next week and lose a day's salary, possibly two, and any work that comes in, you can't do that. You've got to do this thing for the charity, and you've got to give up your social media platform, and how comfortable would you be genuinely? You'd think, well, I've got work that day. I've got to pick the kids up from school. I've got, how can I make this work? You might do it, but it wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't be an easy ask, would it? So no. I think we have to actually think these are human beings who are giving up their time, and possibly turning down other work. So I think you have to really take that on board. They're not just there to service the charity and just to be a public figure, and they have a job. Most of them have got big commitments. They're on podcasts, they're shooting, that kind of thing. So I think we have to be realistic about what can we do to make the ask as easy as possible. And I think the real kind of altruism comes when they're embedded into the charity and they get to see behind the scenes and they get to meet the beneficiaries and that kind of thing. Unfortunately, charities don't always have the time and resource and budget and that kind of thing to make that happen. So I think we would see more real philanthropic behaviour if there was the will for it on the charity side as well.
This is the part of the show in which we dive into some of the latest charity and third sector news. So what have you spotted to kick off this episode, Tim?
Okay, so I've spotted something that I think sort of slipped under the radar a bit. It's been this last couple of weeks of news. It's all been about Trump and Greenland, basically, isn't it? Or Iceland, as he referred to it in a press conference the other day. Oh my God. So there's been all that stuff going on, and inevitably when big news like that happens, other things fall under the radar a bit. And this was a government press release which I saw, which I hadn't seen until I sort of did a little bit of trawling. And this is about a new £11.5 million fund that will help charities and councils to support local communities. So the government announced this recently, that local communities will benefit from this almost or just over £11.5 million government fund to help civil society organisations and local authorities work together to deliver support in areas including mental health, adult social care, women's refuges, and child poverty. This package of money is going to be invested over 3 years and will strengthen partnerships between local councils and civil society to support delivery of more joined up preventative care and support across communities. So talking about this, the Civil Society Minister, Stephanie Peacock, said this £11.59 million investment is about much more than funding. It's about ensuring that whether you are a survivor of domestic abuse, a young person struggling with mental health, or a family facing poverty, you have a support system that is seamless and compassionate. So I thought it was an important piece of news to flag there. 11.59 million is a lot of money, or is it a lot of money in this day and age? I don't know. Something that it's certainly better than nothing. But some would argue that could be a bigger figure. But I would say every little helps. I think that's an important story, Piers.
Yeah, really interesting story, that one too. I've also picked up a really interesting report that's just come out from the Mass Participation Pulse 2026 report, which is a bit of a mouthful, but basically it's all investigating third sector charities and their mass events. So obviously London Marathon is not that far away, but the likes and the rise of those over the last few years, really important to charities of all sizes. And it was published this week by agency Massive, and it showed that 89% of participants in previous events plan to maintain or increase their activity this year. So it breaks all this survey down between over 9,500 responses from runners and other endurance participants all over the UK and Ireland. And it came out with some really interesting figures that 37% of participants expect to do more events this year, which is actually an increase, up from 32%. But actually what's putting people off is all the financial pressures, so the financial cost of living pressures, the nervousness about the commitment financially to do this. And this bit really struck me, actually, and really stood out from analysis of the report. And we'll put the links in the show notes to the actual full report. It's worth fundraising and events people to have a little look at this. It's really interesting stuff. But this bit jumped out. It said that just under 7 in 10 fundraisers, so a lot of them, said they had chosen the event or challenge before selecting the charity. And the report says this highlights the critical role that events play for charities in recruiting and inspiring their fundraisers. Now, for me, I'm not come from an events team background, I thought that was really, really interesting. So people are like, they're into their fitness, they're into taking part, so they'll pick an event and then, I'll allocate that to a certain charity. I thought that might be more the other way around, but...
What's interesting, I think, Piers, on that front, as a runner who keeps an eye out for these kind of things, so I'm interested in stuff like this, is that quite often I think people will want to do an event, then they might have missed the general entry, or they might not be lucky and the general entry might have already gone, and therefore their only option is to look for charity places. So a lot of people look for charity places because they just want to do an event and they've missed the opportunity, missed a window where the event was open, or want to find some way of doing it. So charity places are really important for people as a means to do those kind of events. So yeah, I think that's a fascinating thing. But also one thing you picked up there about the financial pressures. Again, as a runner, if you look at the cost these days of races, they are not cheap to enter. So I think routes to doing events through charities, if the cost is not one that's financial to an individual, but more time in terms of fundraising, then I think that's going to appeal to people for sure. Definitely.
We have this discussion all the time as well. I mean, sometimes people get daunted by the idea of having to fundraise as well for a certain target, don't they? I mean, going out and asking family and friends, unless you're incredibly well connected or used to it, it feels a little bit daunting to a lot of people, I think, understandably.
I think so, especially if you. I mean, personally speaking, I did the London Marathon, and I certainly, maxed out support from friends and family in terms of fundraising for the charity that I was raising money for when I did it. But I wouldn't have felt comfortable going back, say, the year later and ask them all to do the same again. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's hard for people who want to do stuff, because it's can you keep going back to the same people to ask them for money? It's a challenge.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. It is a tricky one. In the first part of our interview, Rachel shared how charities can think more strategically and more confidently about working with celebrities and influencers. In this second half, we get into the trickier territory: cancel culture, reputation management, stewardship, and what happens when things don't go to plan. We also look ahead at where influencer engagement is heading, why micro-influencers are being massively underestimated, and what charities need to do right now if they don't want to be left behind. Let's get back into the conversation with Rachel.
Let me ask you a little bit about cancel culture. So obviously we live in this world where, celebrities, people in the public eye under, intense scrutiny all the time. If they say something wrong, do something wrong, something's dredged up from their social media from 10 years ago, that kind of stuff. It can very quickly, very famous people can be cancelled very, very quickly with massive fallout as a result. How can charities protect themselves against that? What kind of due diligence do you do on their behalf, or should they do to kind of not prepare for that, assuming it's going to happen, but prepare for the worst?
I mean, Google Alert is your friend. You should have a Google Alert set up for all your ambassadors, especially if they're sitting on your website as an official patron or ambassador. You should absolutely have a Google Alert set up for the good and the bad. Like, you should be responding if there's an announcement that they're doing a new film or they've got a new show or something. I mean, hopefully, if you've got a good if you're stewarding really well, you would hopefully know that ahead of time. But if not, and then maybe you share that on your social channels, that kind of thing. So you should be set up for the positive and the potential negatives. And then I think it works like any other sort of reputation management, that you go to your head of comms or your head of PR, whoever that is, and you have a conversation, right? How do we respond to this? And I think the thing to do is with any crisis management, I mean, I've worked in crisis management a lot early on in my career, and reputation management, keep a cool head. That's what I always would say. Don't do a knee-jerk reaction. Take a measured approach to it. Try and find out from the agent what is actually going on here. I mean, nowadays, something can break on social media, and a lot of times conjecture, rumour, someone's affected. Okay, that's unfortunate, but where does someone's offence stop and someone else's free speech start? All of those questions. Again, a podcast all on its by itself. But I think taking a measured approach, not feeling like we have to respond to this straight away. I think there's often this thing in media teams of like, we have to have a response. You don't always have to have a response. Sometimes you need some thinking time. I have worked in organisations where someone has kind of gone off script a bit on social media, and the charity has publicly distanced themselves within hours. I've also worked with organisations where someone was accused of something and it actually went to court, and they stood by that. They had been their patron for 20 years. They stood by their patron all the way through to the case. It was thrown out of court. They were found guilty and not guilty of all charges. And the celebrity actually publicly thanked the charity for standing by them. Now, obviously, both of those scenarios carry risks and benefits. I would say probably somewhere in the middle is the right approach. But I think with cancel culture, I'm hoping now that cancel culture has almost eaten itself, because it was happening so regularly. It's like, which celebrity is going to be cancelled this week? It sells newspapers. It keeps Instagram afloat. I think you have to be quite measured about it, because it was getting to the point where, a celebrity was cancelled on the Tuesday. The media had forgotten about it by the Thursday. The public had forgotten about it by the Friday. And then they're being offered big brand deals or to go into a big reality show like a month later. So where do you stand as the charity out in the cold who's distanced themselves from them? And as I say, one person's offence is another person's right to free speech. So I think you have to be measured on this. Now, obviously, if it's something where they're being accused of something that completely contravenes the aims and objectives and the ethos of the charity, then you have to move quite quickly. If you're working for a domestic violence charity and someone has been accused of domestic violence, you've obviously got to, you've got to make this decision quickly. But generally, just as any reputation management issue, calm, no knee jerk. Really think about it.
Yeah, I think we've seen that play out. We won't name names, won't talk about specific cases, but I think you've seen that quite often. And it's quite interesting, actually, that quite often when something happens, it might be that those charities have taken a few days, taken a little while to consider it, but then kind of almost like herd mentality kicks in. One will drop the celebrity, and all of a sudden they're all dropping the celebrity. Yeah. And that in itself makes headlines.
I do think social media does encourage herd mentality. Definitely. I've seen that, across, in all walks of life. It really does encourage herd mentality. So I think, don't follow the herd necessarily. Just take a step back.
Indeed. Now, if Piers was here today, I know he'd probably reflect on the fact that it's been a really sad week for the Brain Tumour charity. Sophie Kinsella, the author, passed away. How can charities, also a couple of things actually, how can those who work closely with celebrities at charities look after themselves when, especially those sort of condition-related charities like the Brain Tumour charity, who work with celebrities who have lived experience because they have that condition or that diagnosis, and very sadly, as has happened this week, someone passes away. How do you, as somebody who works closely with that celebrity, as I know Piers did very closely with Sophie Kinsella, how do you look after yourself in those situations? And as a charity, how do you respond, and how do you look after yourselves as an organisation when someone you've worked very closely with for probably a long time passes away?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't experienced that. That's quite specific with that story this week, and it's had a lot of traction in the news and on social media. I mean, I think we have to have a conversation generally when we work in the charity sector of how do we look after ourselves, because we are often surrounded by sadness and the kind of darker side of life, I suppose, working in the charity sector. And I think there is a certain kind of person who goes into charity because they are able to kind of work in that, and they want to make a difference despite all of that. So I think we kind of have some of those tools naturally. But I think when I go back to saying a celebrity is a human being, that's a really good example of, and I think it's like ensuring that the family are protected and that they have that chance to grieve, and that, there will be, I'm sure, so many media requests going into Piers saying, can we get interviews, and, can we talk to the family, that kind of thing. And it's about, really taking a step back and going, this is not a media moment, although it is, being blatantly honest that the media are interested in it. It is a time of immense grief and sadness for the family, for the charity, and really importantly, for other people who have brain tumours and their families of like, okay, this is the reality of it. So I think it's about really having that human element first. And I can't say that enough, that, we shouldn't use celebrities as an asset without thinking about them as humans first. So that's,
sure,
a perfect example of that, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And just talk a little bit about how charities manage their relationships with celebrities. How would you recommend, or how would you suggest that charities who have newly recruited a celebrity or an influencer to their ambassador panel, if you like, how should they nurture that relationship? Should you go straight in and ask them to do a front of TV ad campaign, or should you hold off and sort of nurture that relationship slowly over time, building up to asking them for a big ask?
Well, I mean, are you asking me, or are you asking the PR, the social media team?
What would your advice be to a charity? Say, is it wrong to bulldoze straight in and ask them to do something mega, or should you take it slowly?
I think it depends. I mean, look, I have done both. I have put someone up straight off the bat. I would much prefer not to. And again, it goes back to charities not having the time or the budget necessarily to do the stewardship process. I mean, in an ideal world, what I would say is, slowly catch your monkey, maybe do 2 or 3 pieces of sort of lower key activity with someone, get them embedded. In an ideal world, you'd get them to a project visit, you'd get them to meet key stakeholders in the organisation, you'd get them meeting beneficiaries and case studies, because that is the absolute way you're going to get, it's going to have meaning for them, actually meeting people at the sharp end, whether that's the project leaders or the beneficiaries. So in an ideal world, that would be happening behind the scenes, where they might do like a small touch point with the organisation. And then maybe a year down the line, you can put them on the BBC Breakfast Sofa or that kind of stuff. But then I've also worked in organisations where things do happen sort of on the hoof, where, I don't know, someone leaves a big show, and I had an example of this fairly recently where someone was on the Traitors and they name checked the charity that I was working for. His brother had been helped personally by the charity. And suddenly there was this big wave of fundraising that was just happening organically, and the charity's completely on the back foot. The social team, I have to say, were amazing at really leveraging it and getting the fundraising page set up really quickly. I think it was about 90,000, 100,000 pounds came in really quickly. So with something like that, you know, he came out of the show. You had to act really quickly, make them an ambassador quickly, get in front of the agent quickly. But the agent, you know, needed the charity as much, but she was on the back foot with it as well, you know. So sometimes these things do happen organically, and it's about being able to react to both, I guess. But in an ideal world, stewardship, I cannot push it enough. Stewardship is so important for the celebrity and for you. And it's why, like, I do, you know, I do projects, and I'm not going to say no to them. You know, I've got a mortgage to pay and what have you, but I always say, a one-off project is great and you get that bang, but what's the follow-up process on this? How do you keep them with the charity for the next 2, 3, 20 years? No, because the longevity of it is really important.
Absolutely. And that's something I think that a lot of charities perhaps forget, because they might not have the luxury of having a dedicated person who does that. So it might sit within a very, very busy comms team who doesn't have the time to or you know, or the ability to do that. And the risk that if you don't, as you say, is that you end up with a disengaged celebrity. Yeah.
They you know, they're not going to stay around, and if they're not being stewarded, and that is the problem when it becomes, you know, it's someone's job, you know, but you need a dedicated person working on that. And you know, that's not to sell myself, but that is what I do. And I can do it, you know, I can do it for 4 charities, you know, so that I've got the overview of 4. So it kind of works out quite well if people have me stewarding that program. But you cannot expect a celebrity. This is the problem that they make. They might say, oh, right, we'll use them for the Christmas appeal because we got them last year, so we'll use them next year. Well, have you had any touch points with them over the year? Have you checked in with their agent? Have you sent them a congratulations?
Or just said thank you?
Yeah. I mean, thank you. Like, that is I cannot tell you. You know, sometimes charities balk at it. Send a £30 bunch of flowers to the agent to say thank you, or some biscuits. It's really important. Send a card from the chief executive, or a letter. It's really, really important, those basic courtesies. And yeah, you can't expect not to have those touch points at some point through the year. And then, oh, can you give up a square on your Instagram, or can you go and do a big campaign for us on This Morning? It wouldn't happen in any other industry, and it shouldn't happen in ours.
No. Have you ever had the sort of reverse situation happen, though, where you've had a celebrity who's perhaps so enthusiastic that the charity has to contain them a little bit in terms of reining them back? Has that ever been a challenge, or is that wishful thinking?
I have. I was going to say no, but then I thought, yeah, I have. Sometimes you have a celebrity who is genuinely, like, really engaged with it. They have a real personal affinity for it, and they want to make changes. And they think they can come in and make change. And like, why wouldn't you think you can do that? But, you know, you know as well as I do that the cogs that are involved in the charity world of, well, actually, under the Charity Commission, we're not allowed to do that. Well, why are you not allowed to do that? That's quite basic. Well, you know, or there's legislation that stops, or actually, no, we can't do that because that's a government, you know, that's within government to change that. We can. So it's some of those conversations I found that are quite difficult, that they can't affect change as quickly as they would like, or at all, you know, and that we have very strict guidelines in charity of what we are funded to do. You know, sometimes we only have funding to talk about this and not that. And it's those conversations that, if you don't work in that world, are quite hard to translate to the sort of layperson.
Yeah. It can be difficult if your super enthusiastic celebrity goes off script on a TV interview or something like that, and you think, oh, hang on, rein it back a little bit. It's a bit beyond our remit to do what you're asking.
Yeah, that happens quite a lot. But
yeah.
I mean, the other thing is that, you know, I always say that when you're doing an interview on TV, no one listens to every word that you've spoken. It's the overall gist, isn't it? Oh, so-and-so supporting this charity. That's generally the takeout.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, listen, we're into 2026. Got the new year ahead of us. What's your thoughts in terms of trends and patterns for celebrity influencer engagement over this year and into the future? Any sort of trends we should be thinking of or aware of?
Yeah, I think, as I said, I think we've sort of touched on this, the Strictly and the celebrity jungle, I think, is really going to change things. I think it's really going to wake people up to influencers are not a flash in the pan. Content creators are not a flash in the pan. They've got really engaged, large audiences. Some of their audiences, will dwarf a newspaper. Let's be realistic about it. They're not going anywhere, at least not for the foreseeable. And if we don't focus on them and if we don't include them in part of our marketing, we're massively missing out on Gen Z. I don't like saying Gen Z because I'm not American, but yeah, Gen Z and Gen Alpha. We're only kind of talking to our current supporters if we don't engage with these people. So I think that's going to be really, really important. And I think content creation is expensive. And I don't always think that charities take this on board, that asking someone, it's not a case of can you like and share this anymore? That used to happen. It doesn't happen anymore. People are really protective of their platforms, as they should be. It's their livelihood. It's their brand. So anything they post generally is in their own style, it's their own content. It costs money to produce content. You need lighting. You wouldn't expect a celebrity to come to a shoot and pay for the studio and pay for the photographer and pay for the hair and makeup. So why do we expect it of content creators? So I think that's going to be conversations that I think we have to be a bit more realistic and a bit more grown up about how we kind of allocate funds to this. And we're quite happy to take out Facebook ads and Instagram ads. Why are we not putting some budget aside to for content creator is generous enough to give up their time and their platform, that we pay for that content, the cost of it. So I think that's going to be something that we have to start being realistic, having those conversations. I think micro-influencers, I think charities really need to sort of wake up to the power of micro-influencers. And, sometimes I look at someone I was looking at someone earlier today, actually, for one of my clients. He's got 1,500 Instagram followers, which in the general scheme of things is probably less than the average 18-year-old kid,
Mm-hmm.
But when I looked at who was following him, it's really big names in this. I was looking for the wildlife sector, which is something that I work in quite a lot. All the big guns in the wildlife sector and all the big NGOs, they're all following him. So of those 1,500 people, there's some really, really key. So that might actually be more beneficial to the organisation than someone who's got 150,000 or 1.5 million. So I think we really need to look at and really drill down into micro-influencers. That's an extreme of having 1,500 followers. But yeah, the people that were following him, I was like, wow, So I think I've just done quite a lengthy contract with a breast cancer charity, and there's a kind of whole sort of network of micro-influencers who are, I don't like using the word survivors, but I don't know, there's no other word really, of breast cancer survivors. And they're really influential. And they're someone that, they're a network and a community that people go to when they first get their diagnosis. So I think micro-influencers definitely shouldn't be overlooked. And also, they're in a good position because, they're trying to grow their audience. So there's a lot of collaborative work that you can do there, that they might need your audience as much as you need theirs. And the micro-influencers of today can be the macro-influencers of tomorrow, or, it can happen very quickly that someone can blow up. And if you're in at the ground floor, then you're in really good stead. So, yeah, I think what my overarching thing here is content creation and influencers. It's only going to get bigger.
Yeah. I think it's a fascinating prospect for what lies ahead in terms of how charities can think about strategically how they want to approach this challenge, because you've got to think almost along 2 or 3 different strands in terms of you want your exposure from a national level or a local level, whatever your approach is, plus you also want to raise awareness amongst your specific community. So it's about, I'm assuming it's about balancing those sort of bigger names for the national exposure versus the smaller, the micro influencers for some of that pure awareness amongst your community. Because I think that's really vital. Some of the charities that I've worked with in the past, I can see how important that is. In fact, probably more important to engage with someone who has strong influence over your specific community to raise awareness of what you do. Perhaps more important than spending too much time on an out of reach influencer or celebrity on a national level. So that's really interesting, and that balance, how charities can think about strategically. They've got limited time and resource. Where do you put your time and resource in terms of working with those individuals? So I think that's something that a lot of charities are going to have to think about, perhaps.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of conversations that need to happen, and obviously I would say that. But I think we've reached a kind of critical point that unless it's going to be the charities that do have these conversations and do understand the way that the world is going in terms of media, that are going to flourish eventually. I think if you don't get with this, you are going to be left behind.
Excellent. Rachel, it's been absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much for joining us. Last question for you. What about you for 2026? What lies ahead for you this year? What's going to be the highlight for you?
I mean, from a work point of view, I think I'm going to be working a lot more with talent agencies. I'm still going to be working with charities, obviously, but I am really keen to work with both, because poacher turned gamekeeper or gamekeeper turned poacher. I don't know which way around it will be, but I think I'll be able to offer more to the charity by working on both sides. And I am looking at maybe sort of doing something a bit more on the sort of holistic side. On the side for me, I'm looking at, I've reached a certain age where you start to sort of think about life, beyond what you've done for the last 25 years. So I think I'm got my kids have sort of off to university and that kind of thing now. So I think it's going to be a lot more yoga, I think, and retreats in amongst celebrity stuff. Yeah. Excellent.
Oh, sounds perfect. Well, listen, we'd love to welcome you back because there's so much we could talk about. And I know Piers would definitely love to join this conversation as well. So when he's back with us, we'll get you back on for another episode. But for today, that's been amazing. Rachel, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks so much, Tim. It's really lovely to meet you. Thank you.
On the show, as you know, we're really keen to make space for small charities, the ones you don't always hear about, but who are quietly doing brilliant work in their communities every single day. They're often working with tiny teams and tight budgets, tackling big issues and making real change happen without much of a platform behind them. And that's something we want to help with. So if you work for a small charity or you know one that deserves a bit more recognition, we'd love to hear from you. Drop us an email at thecharityshowpod@gmail.com or use the link in the show notes. Tell us who you are, who you support, and what would genuinely make the biggest difference for you right now. We'll do our best to bring those voices onto the show. Right then, Piers, who have we got this week?
I love this little reply, this little nomination that's come through. It just brims with passion and for a cause. It comes from Lauren over at K9 Partners. She says, "We train dogs to bring greater independence and quality of life to people with physical disabilities. Our skilled dogs offer practical help with everyday tasks and provide psychological and social benefits, including increased confidence, social interaction, and self-esteem to their partners." And this payoff line's lovely from Lauren there. She says, "I love working for this incredible charity." So that's a massive shout out to K9 Partners.
Brilliant. Love that. Love a dog charity. As dog lovers ourselves, Piers, definitely gets a thumbs up, I think. And we also heard this week from Samuel Chambers, who told us about CCLG, the Children and Young People's Cancer Association. He told us they do amazing work as both a research funder and administrator, and that their work includes advocacy and policy influencing. They're an information provider and supporter of all professionals in the field as a professional association themselves. Last year, they merged, he tells us, the children's and young people's strands for greater cohesion and collaboration. So it sounds like a really important association there that does some incredible and powerful, influential work.
2 more brilliant small charities this week making a huge difference. And don't forget, if there's a small charity you think we should feature, drop us a line at thecharityshowpod@gmail.com or head to the link in the show notes to nominate them.
And that's a wrap for episode 41. A big thank you to Rachel Braier for giving us all hope that maybe that celebrity we're hoping to attract to our charity isn't out of reach after all.
More importantly, you don't need to be a celebrity to feature on the show. If you'd like to share your own story with the wider charity world this year, 2026, get in touch. We'd love to hear from you and welcome you on to a future episode of the show.
Absolutely. Do get in touch. All the links are in the show notes. But we'll be back in a fortnight, so give us a follow on your usual podcast platform to make sure you don't miss it.
And while you're there, please give us a quick 5-star rating. It really helps others in the sector to find the podcast.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on The Charity Show.